the idea that sex and orgasm, especially if it's more, I guess, like if it's more of like a fetish or a kink, it seems to be something that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge or talk about. Um, and I've seen this on so many different documentaries, and I've read this in books that there's a lot of people, and I guess you would say it's anecdotal. I'm not sure that if they have a trauma, specifically if maybe someone was raped, and I read this, and I think it was also in Jamie's book, that a lot of the first responders to 9/11 were using like S&M clubs, if you will, to deal with their PTSD, and it's like really common to use S&M specifically for reframing and like rewriting that story and to kind of heal that trauma. So I'm curious if you've done any work in regards to like trauma healing and specifically anything with kink or like sexual reframing.
Not with the kink, but with the orgasmic meditation.
Hmm.
We had some theories around exactly from some of the BDSM literature of my colleagues how that might work. So I could imagine a lot of PTSD is affective dampening. So that is, it's very scary that this thing could happen again. And so I just need to shut my emotions off. And while I might like to feel good, it's too risky to feel good. I just need to shut everything off so I don't fall off the deep end and become depressed or anxious again. It's much safer if I just shut everything down. And that, obviously, with some other pieces, but is generally PTSD in terms of its emotional impact. And so the idea was, is there a way you could get people into having intense emotional experiences that are safe, where
Hmm.
they could start to have those that feeling of intensity again in a way that isn't frightening, and they can do exposures essentially. So I can feel this high intensity but positive, pleasurable thing, and then I can come back from it and see that I'm still okay. And then I can do it again. I have this intense experience and I'm still okay. Kind of allowing your affective range to broaden out again. Um, and so we do this with PTSD treatments already in
Hmm.
doing exposures. PTSD treatments are really challenging. So, cognitive processing therapy or CBT is a really common one, and you're essentially walking through the components of the trauma that happened to you. Seeking safety is kind of another group way of dealing with PTSD and its effects. So, why not go the other direction? Rather than doing the exposure to the negative stuff, could we do exposure to the high intensity positive emotions, and would that still be restorative? And we looked at that in orgasmic meditation, kind of. And what I mean is, we looked at people who already did orgasmic meditation and what their trauma history was, rather
Hmm.
than getting people with a trauma history and assigning them, and seeing what happened. And that's just a common kind of first step. That is, it's lower risk if you've got people who are already having that experience, who are doing the thing you want to test. And what we saw was those people who had a trauma history in our study actually reported more sexual arousal in the context of orgasmic meditation. So, what we take from that is these people are not sexually broken, which is a common way of describing PTSD. They're not promiscuous, which is often applied because people with a PTSD history, especially sexual trauma, tend to have a higher partner count. As they get into adulthood, and it's very, very common to see, especially marriage and family therapists. Not all of them; some are awesome. But, say they're being promiscuous, they're acting out is a really common way of describing those sexual behaviors in people who have a trauma history. And I don't think that's right. I think they're doing something that's working. And what I would like to know is, what about that is working? Can we capitalize on that? It's making them feel better somehow.
Hmm.
These people aren't stupid. And I'd like to know what's the ingredient in those sexual interactions, those increased interactions. And we thought from our study that maybe it is just they're able to have these intense emotional experiences in a way that's positive. They can have them in a way that feels safe. And so obviously we still want people having sex that's safe, sane, no one assaulting anyone, consensual, all those good things. So that might be a great place to focus, rather than trying to decrease the sex behaviors themselves,
Hmm.
because it looks like they may be helpful in
Hmm.
PTSD. So I don't want to squash those. I want to understand why they're doing it and see if we can enhance the positive effects.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and again, it just seems like such an amazing alternative to someone who can't take psychedelics, because right now you can only do it in, I think, what, 2 states here maybe, unless it's
Mhm.
for research, so it's not accessible to anyone, whereas, sex obviously is accessible,
Yeah.
especially if you're it's to
Just like
everyone.